I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, welcome West Point, Mississippi, home of Mossy Oak brand camo and the Gamekeeper Studio. Lanny,
Gamekeeper Studio.
have you heard from Dudley? He's still
I have not
MIA.
heard from
I
Dudley.
have talked to Dudley myself.
Oh, really?
Believe it or not, I don't normally, but talked to him about 30 minutes ago. A friend of ours that we know, I won't say any names, called me and said, hey, we've got to take a couple of trees down back behind one of these lots on the highway back here. And the city administrator told me I have these oak trees that are here are illegal to cut down.
What?
They're illegal species to cut down. And I was like, he said, do you know anything about that? Never heard of it. So I called Dudley. He's on vacation out there. And he said, I've never heard of that in my life, but I'll research it. So evidently somebody is saying that there are certain species that are illegal to cut down.
Well, do you know what species that tree
I
is?
do not. I'm not going to say who it was or where it was or anything else. I just thought it was interesting. I'm assuming it's a city ordinance type of thing and not,
Not
broader.
species
Yeah.
specific.
When it said it was species specific, Google it right now. I looked up and it did list species that were illegal to cut. Now, obviously, that's not for forestry purposes or something else, but it said so.
Bronson, have you ever heard of anything like this?
Never heard of such.
I wish we could get the last 2 minutes back. I'm not sure this is going to turn into anything at all.
Probably not, but you asked me, so I told you.
I'll be doggone.
So sitting in...
In Mississippi, this is AI now. Let me get you the pathway. In Mississippi, it is illegal to cut certain tree species on state-owned or land held in trust by the state. These include cypress, pine, oak, gum, hickory, pecan, walnut, mulberry, and poplar.
Another site.
Yeah,
actually,
pretty much all of them. You can't cut a tree.
Well, I mean, there was another one specifically listed, like 4 kind of oaks that were illegal to cut down. Bobby.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well,
Why would you doubt me?
This one
you
breaks
know
down
better.
live oak, willow oak, shumard, nut all.
Correct. Those are the ones. That's exactly what I saw.
look at you, Lanny.
Some hardwood trees in Mississippi are protected, including bald cypress. No, I'm so glad we're selling these trees. Mm-hmm. We're helping.
Protected species.
All right.
That was Google, by the way. not
Sitting in Dudley's chair, and he's doing a great job, I might add.
He is.
Is Ronnie Cuss.
He's just a natural.
Hey, I'm not trying to take his place. He's often imitated, never duplicated, and I'm just filling his space. But I heard Dr. Bronson was going to be here, and I'm like, can I sit in one more time?
I got some
Dudley's on
questions.
vacation?
Yeah.
That's
right.
exactly what gets me here, just to be in the room to listen to him.
Well,
Yeah.
let's
We're kinfolk.
y'all have the same last name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa!
Are y'all related at all?
Whoa! I just realized that.
You got to go way, way, way back. But
That's right.
Maybe so.
They said, like, back right at Adam and Eve, they were both kids.
His,
That's way back.
his kinfolk were very productive. I think mine ended up in prison, and the family link broke right there. So.
Well, Dr. Bronson Strickland, Mississippi State University. Let's hit the horns for him if we could. There, Richie.
Absolutely.
They're both big buck marauders. I'll say that for them.
Oh, I hear.
Well, I don't know about Bronson.
Marauder.
Let's not go that far.
Marauder.
Yeah. I have the desire to be. I'm just not that successful.
Now, you got that itchy trigger finger right here.
Well, it takes. I mean, desire is what starts it all. That's for sure.
Hey, cuz will tell you about that big deer thing. A blind hog can find an acorn, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was
and
that was
look,
divine intervention by something.
you want to get the haters started, kill a big deer.
Oh, yeah.
And luckily, the only giant one I ever killed was in '81, and it was still an uproar. And back then, that wasn't happening. But it's like now, I'll just take my 3-year-old doe, process my hamburger meat.
That's
and
correct.
just
Keep
move
quiet
on.
about it.
Keep out of
I've seen it before. People
make my
that
tacos.
win the big buck contest, they lassoed it and shot it at night and did
Heard
this or that, hit it with a car. I mean, it's crazy how people.
Hey, I was working at a sporting goods store when I killed that one, and it was in the paper. People didn't know me, and they'd come in. Did you hear about that big deer? Yeah. Well, he shot it at night. He was poaching on my grandpa's place, and I was like, man, that guy's a thug. And I was the guy.
Yeah. I had to tell him that.
Oh man, Bronson.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
It's getting close to deer season. People are starting to think you ride
is
down the road,
deer-
you see
it's
people shooting
on
their bows in
the
the
It is
backyard.
deer
backyard.
season in South Carolina.
It's close.
Yep.
So
Right
when
around
I'm
the corner.
looking on our cameras right now, seeing a lot of bucks and they're all in velvet still.
Going through that antler
What's going
genesis.
on with them right now, and when are they going to start shedding a little bit of that fuzz?
Yeah, so I would put it at, don't quote me exactly, and there's a lot of individual variation, Lanny. So
Yes, there is.
there's a little, it depends.
Yeah.
right here for
always,
this, but
always.
There we go, right off the bat.
they're mostly done in terms of beam length, tine length, etc. They're 80 plus, 90 plus % done. So during this last month or so is a process that we call the mineralization. And so, they're growing up and out. And so, but then what happens is the filling in or the mineralization or the hardening is now taking place. And then when that is complete, then that is going to initiate the velvet shedding after that. So we're just in the last stages of that right now.
So yeah,
That's the first I've heard of antler mineralization.
Yeah.
He's always got a new word when he
Yeah, I
comes
like
with
it.
it.
course.
Well, it goes from flesh to bone.
Yeah.
And so that is a process of laying down that matrix of minerals to do that.
They sure look big in velvet right now.
They
they
look
look huge.
fantastic.
It adds to the mass.
Absolutely.
Question, because I have noticed, because when you start watching the cameras, you learn so much, and certain distinctive deer, and you see them get older, you know it's them, and you see that. I mean, I've seen deer. I found sheds at the end of January, and I've seen deer at the 1st of April have both sides of their horns.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy the variances. And I know antler velvet shedding is not that wide of a gap, but I was looking at some, I've seen one before. The one I killed in velvet was in Alabama. It was like the opening of bow season, the 15th of October. And he still had velvet on his horns. And I still remember seeing the picture I had of him. And he had grown a lot from August to later in September when he still had velvet in a picture then. I never got another one. And I'm just wondering, is there differences in the ones that will grow and be done by, say, 1st of August or continue to grow their horns to September? Is there variation in that?
There is, and some of that can be based on an individual. Just genetically, that is when they do it. But you are correct. You're going to see a lot more variation in the antler shedding than you will see in the velvet shedding. And one of the reasons that you're going to see such a big difference in the antler shedding is the physiology and the condition of the deer. Yeah. And so a great example in Mississippi is if you have a big flooding event, and so food is very limited and they're crowded and so forth, then you'll see antler shedding easily a month earlier than normal. So it's really about their condition. It's about their testosterone levels. So Toxie, the buck that is growing a little bit longer and then shedding his velvet a little bit later, it might be that his testosterone is peaking due to genetic purposes a little bit later than the population average.
Well, what other thing too, when I'm watching, I'm like, man, that deer still got a little bit more left. We're all looking at him, oh, he's going to be, man, I wish his times were a little bit longer. I bet he's got a little bit more growing to do, and you just never know. And so I was just wondering, it seems like when they're actively growing, there's like a black on the tips of the beams or on the tip of the points. There's like a jet black, almost kind of like
kind of bulbous.
Yeah, and it's still there, and then it disappears when they quit growing.
Thank you, Mr. Know-It-All.
Is there a way for the average guy like us to know, looking at a picture, that he might still have some growing left to do?
Yeah, I think your observation is correct. I think basically when the shape of that, when it's no longer like Bobby used, round, bulbous looking, I would say when that starts narrowing and slimming down, that's going to be a really good indicator that it's about at the end.
So y'all have this great facility over there, I hear it referred to as the deer pens.
Deer Mecca.
So
deer lab.
when y'all are studying these bucks, once something triggers and he decides he's going to shed, does he stand there and shed it all right there, or does it take a couple of days?
Usually, there can be some variation. There could be some where one day he had most of his velvet, and the next day it was completely gone. But I would say usually about a 2-day period.
Can you tell that it's bothering him? Is it? I mean, I think the thought is it itches and makes him want to scratch it off.
Yeah, I don't necessarily buy that, because if it's itching, there would be a feedback with the nerves, and we know it's mineralized and it's bone. So quite honestly, I don't know what is their cue. It may just be that I'm now in hard antler, and so now I'm going to start rubbing my antlers against stuff, which is what they do, and they notice the velvet is coming off, and they just keep going with it. Good question. I don't know the answer.
Don't some of them eat their velvet?
Some of them will. Yeah.
Interesting.
Just like many does will eat their afterbirth.
Right.
Probably all does eat their afterbirth. Yeah.
Mythbuster question. I read somewhere where when that's going on, it's the fastest growing cell of any kind known to anybody. Is that true?
I think with the exception of certain types of cancers. Really? Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then we're talking about mineralization. And then we've often talked about, too, do putting out minerals affect antler growth? Depends. Maybe. We're still yet to be seen on that, or yet to be proven.
Let's think about it. Are you, Lanny, going to get a response from a multivitamin?
I don't know. I take them all the time.
Could you see yourself, if you had a very, very poor diet that was nutrient restricted, could you see yourself getting a benefit from a supplement or a multivitamin?
I would think so.
Okay. If you ate till you were completely full of the best foods and homegrown foods and whole foods, et cetera, do you think you'd get a benefit from the
I
supplement?
probably wouldn't need it.
You probably wouldn't need it. I think it's the exact
That
same
makes
thing
sense.
with our deer
That is the
population.
best explanation I've ever heard.
Yep.
Blow the horns for this man, please.
Yeah.
Well, it sounded like you might have weakened your stance.
Yeah, I think you did a little bit.
You're saying it depends, basically.
Well, it does depend. I
Yeah.
mean, it all depends. Do they have a good diet or not?
Yeah,
Well,
makes sense.
nobody asked me, but
Okay.
I mean, I will
Anyways.
agree that maybe you can't tell if it made any difference, but it feels like it's kind of like you don't know. So why not? Because we don't think. I mean, it's just it can't. If it can't hurt them, it might help them. It's just my thoughts on the thing.
It might. And so, and you and I may arrive at a decision with a different pathway. The way I would arrive at it would be, is there a lot of evidence that nutrients are limited? So I'm going to look at what's the condition of the deer historically? Are they fat? Are they big? What is antler development? What is the condition of my habitat? Is there a lot of food out there? So I'm start moving more and more towards it would be diminishing returns to add a supplement. But we could leave right now, and within an hour's drive, we could find some place where the habitat's not good, supplemental food plots aren't doing enough, the deer density is too high, et cetera, where supplementing could help.
Do you guys, like in the deer pen, do y'all see a lot of ticks get on your deer?
Not as much in the deer pens, because remember, we have the help of the Mississippi State Vet School.
Okay. Yeah.
And so
they're probably
they
treating
get
them and
treatments. Yeah.
But in the wild,
I might need to come get one of those treatments.
I see a lot of deer in pictures with ticks around their eyes
Oh,
and their
yeah.
ears. It's just kind of heartbreaking.
It does.
To
It hurts.
watch that.
Stings. Yeah.
Is there anything a guy can do? We see cattle guys put out sulfur blocks and stuff. Do you think that potentially could help?
There's a lot of evidence that if a deer has a diverse diet, so naturally occurring plants, all the species that the deer species evolved with, that they actually can treat themselves with certain plants and the chemicals and the tannins and the secondary compounds that at least it can help with that.
Interesting.
But that is so complicated, the science of that, of trying to tease that apart.
So go ahead.
I was just thinking about American Beautyberry and how it's kind of an insect repellent. And,
Yeah.
So you mean to tell me that Uncle Joe's cotton candy power pellets that are guaranteed to make the antlers bigger? That may be a bit of a hoax.
That could be a stretch.
Just a stretch, okay? Just double check.
Guaranteed.
So, Toxie, think back to when you were like a teenager.
How far back? It may be a challenge.
Let's say a teenager and you start hunting. Do you remember ticks being as bad then as they are now?
No.
I don't remember them being
What
this
about you,
bad.
Bronson?
But I mean, I never stopped to look at anything back then. I was Mach 5 with hair on fire.
Well, to me, we've talked about this a couple times with our podcast on Alpha Gal or whatever, but and Bronson could probably validate this. One of the main carriers of ticks are deer, and we've had a huge increase in deer density population over the past.
That's right.
So, it kind of makes sense.
So it's probably going to get worse, but potentially.
It could. I don't want to promote doom and gloom, but
I got 12 off of me yesterday. So.
Some of the, I do think
It was
some
11
of the,
when I left. I found one more.
some of the people that, there's obviously some very reputable feed companies that, sell deer feed that are great nutritional products for deer. I think some of those can have stuff to help with the ticks.
Wasn't people doing garlic? Yeah, garlic at one
garlic.
point.
But again, I looked at Bronson.
I mean, it's an environmental thing broader than just like what deer come to a feeder and stuff anyway. So I do feel like, and this is totally anecdotal, we had that crazy fastest drop in history, temperature drop.
Yeah.
A year and a half ago, and killed all the food plots, killed landscaping plants that were 40 years old. I mean, killed everything just about that had any vascular tissue at all. And we had to go on talking about what happened then. But I noticed a big drop in the number of ticks the next spring, and then actually this year for me. Now I know different areas are different, but I have had less ticks on me for the last 2 springs, and I usually get them all the time.
Yeah.
Hey guys, listen up. Let me tell you about an awesome deal Springfield Armory is offering now through the end of 2024. When you purchase a brand new model 2020 Waypoint or Redline rifle, you'll receive a model 2020 rimfire rifle with a black synthetic stock absolutely free. That's an over $400 value on the house. You know we love Springfield Armory and their top-notch products you'd be proud to hand down to your kids and grandkids. So why wait? Learn more about this incredible offer at GearUp2024.com. Springfield Armory. Defend your legacy.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
Yeah. Wow. So we got somebody's getting them a little Facebook message there.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my guess.
That's our social media monster over there.
That's his TikTok account blowing up.
So thinking about bucks and velvet right now, they're in these bachelor groups. They're tolerating each other. So sometime soon, their testosterone is going to start rising, and they're not going to be buddies anymore.
That's exactly right.
Is that what happened to you and me, Bob?
Y'all used to be
That was
buddies.
your testosterone,
Yeah.
maybe?
Finally,
Over
my
there peaking.
testosterone. But that's just so fascinating. It must rise really fast. And that's part of what's making the velvet come off?
Yeah, so you're going to see that peak, starting about now, primarily in September, October, et cetera. But when that peaks, that is the initiation for the velvet shedding and the antler hardening. And so you kind of have a physiological marker there that once they are in hard antler, even though there are no does receptive at that time of year, but they can breed at that time. So they are a functional breeding male when they are in hard antler. And then coupled with that now is how they're going to treat the guys. So people that were buddies are now competitors. And so that is where you start seeing that social structure and the hierarchy. And so that's when the pecking order begins, and that's when the sparring, and they start sorting out who's dominant.
Just like turkeys, honestly.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's crazy because I've said it from a kid. I saw it. They're like best friends for like 8 months. I mean, thick as thieves, ganged up together, bachelor herds. That's what we call them. And then they try to kill each other. Literally, the intent is to kill the other guy for a month or so. It's crazy. Testosterone.
That kind of leads us to where one of the things you wanted to talk about was the change from a summer range to a fall range. Y'all got some latest research from the Mississippi State Deer Lab there.
That's a fascinating topic.
We do. Couple things. Number one, I'm so lucky right now because I have Natasha Ellison is part of the lab now and helping, and she is a bona fide mathematician.
All right.
And so
everybody needs one of those.
Which I wasn't going to call you that, Bobby. Sorry.
So when she crunches the numbers, it's one of the, I have full confidence that when the mathematician says, but also I want to say this is, it's preliminary. So literally we've been working on this the past week or so. So we need to dig further in this and get it finalized and so forth. So what she did was she looked at bucks that went from what was their summer home range, so for a couple months during the summer, the distance from that home range to where they were in the fall and winter during hunting season. And so I ask y'all, on average, knowing that there's going to be some that are homebodies that don't move much, there's going to be some that are extreme, but what do y'all think is the average distance between the center of the summer home range and then the hunting season home range?
That's like that's like my cousin Vinny's movie. That's a trick question.
I'm gonna guess. I'd say half a mile.
I was gonna go a little bit more than that. I was gonna say 1.5 miles.
Yeah, I'm more than 1.5 miles. I'm going to say it depends on their bellies and the food supply myself.
Well, is there a difference in the fall range and their rut range? Because I think there's a big difference in that.
Oh, good question.
I would say the fall range and the rut range are the same, but during the rut there will be excursions from the rut range.
Yeah,
that's right.
That makes sense.
I like that. Excursions. Excursions.
Well, I mean, they chase one, they go wherever she goes till they breed her. Or they can't find one, so then they go on excursions looking for one. So that too. But for me, it's been like we've noticed it by seeing a picture of a deer here, and then in the winter he's there, and it's like if there's ample food everywhere, it's not that far. But if there's like in ag country where there's like here, there's places where there's really good summer ag and food, and then there's a desert for 10 miles or more.
That's true.
And that's where I think they learn to migrate to the food. I've also noticed, though, they'll go to the winter food, like the place we had leased. It's gone now with all the white oaks. It was crazy. And the deer that would show up there
from miles away.
2 miles away.
Yeah,
we had one 2 miles away.
We even saw one 2 miles away, no, 1.5 miles away the same day.
That's right. Yep.
So what's your guess? You're not getting out and guessing.
I'm going in the mile and a half
Yeah,
thing.
no, I'm probably about mile to mile and a half. It's somewhere in that range.
Pretty good. Pretty good. On average, and there's some real complicated differences in the way she made the calculation.
Right.
So generalizing here, about 1,000 yards.
1,000 yards.
Well,
how many
1,000
yards in a mile?
Well, there's
5,280 feet.
Yeah.
1,760. So it's going to be a little over half mile.
Look at Natasha.
No. I can add 2 and 2 sometimes.
So to me, that was really encouraging because
you were right.
We know there's always going to be the case of the buck that just shifts and moves, and you don't see it all during hunting season.
Right.
But another thing that was really cool, the way Natasha looked at it, was when she calculated that summer home range and then that fall winter home range, she looked at the extent of the overlap as well.
Huh.
So how much of its range is now occupied during... So if they were completely different, there would be 0% overlap. If they were exactly the same, it'd be 100%. And from from summer to fall, winter, about a 70% overlap
Huh.
Wow.
on average.
70%.
And y'all learn this because the deer have collars on them.
The bucks had GPS collars on them.
No
That's
better,
exactly
no better,
right.
no better data
And
than that.
they must have lasted at least 2 years then for you to be able to get this.
That's right. Now, not on all of them. Bucks die. Some got killed, and sometimes the collar fell off or whatever. But yes, most of them went over that 2 years.
Boy, this GPS, it just takes all there's, it,
Well, I mean,
it just,
wonder
there's
out of
no
it. Yeah.
more, what's that going on? You know exactly.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
But it's average. I mean, there's exceptions to all the rules.
It
honestly.
seems like, though, I've noticed that everybody, people all over the country will know, okay, this deer, and you used to watch people on TV showing deer hunting shows. This deer just showed up. I mean, I didn't,
Never knew it was
yeah,
here.
didn't know it was here. And it doesn't seem like that will always be consistently, but for me at least, if you've got a distinctive deer and you've got pictures of him in the summer, almost every time he will be back to the same place every summer. Now, I don't know if his excursions are the same in the winter. I don't know. But it seems like whatever his summer is kind of his home, I guess, where he was born, maybe, close to it, they come back to there consistently. It seems like to me.
Yeah, well, cuz you were saying something like that today. You had a deer that just showed back up.
Yeah, my middle grandson missed a really nice deer. I'm talking about Mississippi on a small farm. It was
Yeah.
a nice deer, and he shot at it opening day. He got a little buck fever.
It happened.
But
Imagine that.
yeah, and I had a couple of cameras over there, and it was nice food plot, not much pressure on my place, and it disappeared. Never saw it again, and everybody had the mully grubs, kicking rocks and all that. 2 weeks ago, 3:30 a.m., bam,
Shows
same
up.
exact spot. Clearly the same deer. That's why I was talking to Dr. Bronson. I said, have you ever heard of such a thing? And he was just nodding his head, and it's like,
Well, there's the data right there.
homebody. I guess he's a homebody. But, just because they don't show up on your camera don't mean they're not there. I think some of them are like Bigfoot, and they can sense where those cameras are, and you just don't get a picture of them.
Yeah.
And especially if you're careful about going in and not going much. But, yeah, it happens.
So, Bronson, do you think these excursions are more about that buck finding a doe and she's someplace else, or he's traveling, he finds her and he goes and he stays with her, or is he just liking to go?
I think it's a little bit of both, because many of the excursions are happening outside of the peak of the rut. And so it might just be exploring. It might just be, I'm going to go look for greener pasture. Maybe there's going to be greater food over here or greater cover over here. Or maybe when the scrape network is beginning, it's checking in and being able to determine what does are in the neighborhood, what is their estrus level state, at that point. So I would say, Bobby, all of the above, potentially.
And you had the buck bedding study that y'all did last year, which was fascinating. You referenced these personality types of bucks, and you were talking about the homeboys and then the ones that like to make excursions. Do you remember what the breakdown of that percentage was? Was it?
So the frequency of bedding was very similar. If you're what we called a sedentary versus a mobile and all that sort of stuff. The whole deal was the mobile bucks are just completely doing a different home range shift outside of kind of this normal summer bachelor group going into fall. These are ones, like I said, on average, they had a 70% overlap.
Yeah.
So a mobile buck would be a buck with 0% overlap.
Gotcha.
They are here on this 1,000 acres, give or take, and then they are 5 miles down the road and occupy a completely different area.
Gotcha.
And that's about 30% of the bucks do that.
30% of bucks are mobile.
The furthest one you've seen?
That would be the one that swam the Mississippi River.
Yeah,
that was
read
big.
about that
Going
in the
in-
paper. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like crowfly, 15, 18 miles.
And swam a mile-wide river to
and
do it.
swam a river.
For what reason? Who knows?
Who knows?
Girls, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, that'll do it.
A lot of people say, well, he went to, swam and went to an agricultural region in Louisiana, but that's not the explanation. there was soybean and agriculture available on the Mississippi side as well as on the Louisiana side. So it wasn't just good summer food was
Where
across
he
the river.
was, as good a food as you could ask for.
Yeah.
He just, for whatever reason, anchored back to going to that spot during the summer.
You know, y'all have done some impressive research through the past
I
years,
mean,
'cause
and
we're
they're
kinda-
cranking it out too. Which
We're
is
bringing
great.
up these different studies that y'all are doing. That's got to make you proud.
Oh, absolutely. Very proud.
Is there something that y'all are studying right now that's going to come out in the next few years that you can tell us about? Some kind of research that we can look forward to?
Well, what we're talking about now, we have not put this into a journal article yet, so we're going to be developing that. Some things that are going to be of great interest to hunters. This is the way I put it with myself. So I met with the Deer Lab team and basically said, we are going to put everything that we can into answering the question about the effects of the moon.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, yeah.
The moon
wow.
phase, the moon position, overhead, underfoot, moon rising, moon blah, blah, on and on and on. And then once we do that, I'm done. I'm never doing any type of analysis on the moon ever again.
I love it.
So we once had somebody say they had association between the closeness, not the phase of the moon, but the closeness of the
perigee
moon
or the apogee.
right? Closeness to the Earth in its orbit, and it would
There you go. Thank you, Lanny.
more predictive of the chance deer would be up during daylight. Now I don't know if that was the case or not. So I'm just bringing up that there's the cycle we're in, which is only what you can see, but the actual closeness it is to the Earth might change the gravitational pull.
Yep. So when we dug into that, when you get on, Bobby, when you get on the interwebs and you start digging into stuff like this, there's an explanation for just about every possible position and phase of the moon. You know, somebody has seen something and said, this is the reason why. You know, it's the sun, the moon, the position, whatever. So essentially, we just went through and we tried our best to categorize all of the different categories that there is some type of support, widespread support amongst hunter groups for here's a reason why you should see greater deer activity. So we're going to be releasing that here in hopefully a few weeks.
Ooh, right.
You should put it in a book form, and when somebody asks you from now on, just say, buy the book. So you don't have to answer them questions, because you're right.
www.bronson.com.
Yeah,
But I'm gonna put y'all on the spot here.
All right.
Now we stay on the spot all the time, Bronson.
So, how many of y'all here, show of hands, be honest?
This is a radio show, Bronson. We can't show hands.
I want a show of hands that I can see so I can remember and hold you to it.
Okay.
How many of you think that the moon influences deer movement behavior?
Hold on. Depends.
It depends, but my hand's up.
I kind of think it does.
Okay. So is that 4 out of 4?
So, clarify.
It
So
depends.
you're saying, does it influence it at all? I raise my hand. It has to be, I think it influences none at all. Because I do think, yes, it does in some cases.
And what I mean by influence would be, when I say influences deer movement behavior, what I'm saying is, do you think the moon, some phase or facet of the moon, is going to influence if a deer stays bedded longer during the day or gets up and moves more during the day?
During the day?
Yep. We're not talking about nighttime. We're talking
Oh,
about
well, I
effects
never
for
thought
hunters.
about this now. Okay.
Impacts to hunting.
No, Lanny hunts so.
I mean, you don't hunt at night?
Well, Laney, we don't talk about it.
Just play it.
Boy, Bronson, it's a deep subject.
Don't worry about being wrong, Bobby. Just
There's
raise your hand or not.
so many. I have grown up thinking that it did, and it's kind of a hard habit to break.
It is.
Okay, that's fair.
Personally, I think that no matter what the moon might influence, that it's completely 100% trumped by weather, no matter what the moon says. So if the weather conditions are in such a certain way and they're all the same, could it? I don't know. I think it does probably, but it's more to do with how long does that mean he's been since he ate and making him hungry? Or, so all of a sudden it's been, 10 hours and he's starving to death, but gosh, it didn't dark yet. Well, yeah, I'll get up and move in daylight a little bit. So I don't know. There's just cycles I think get kicked off by weather myself.
I've always thought
high pressure.
Yeah. When we're talking about this, I thought just deer movement period, not during daylight hours, honestly.
What about cuz here?
I've raised my hand both times. I absolutely think it affects it. And other than just hunting a lot since I was a kid, you go by Dr. Johnny Lanier at Bent Creek. They've been in the guide business forever. And all they do
40
is,
years?
Yeah, record. They got little notebooks going back to whenever, every hunt, person's name.
Thousands and thousands
of
hunts.
pages of it. The moon phase, the wind direction, the temperature, and all that. And Dr. Lanier finished first in his veterinary class at Auburn. He's smart. And he can go back and said, I can guarantee you, I can show you we kill our best bucks on a full moon. I'm like, what? And so I'm going with Dr. Lanier. I'm not scared to hunt on the full. I think it affects it. The fishermen live and die by it.
I think Bronson's got something up his sleeve.
He probably does. And
he's trying to make a fool out of Bobby, and we're getting pulled into it
when he brings this new study out.
But don't you think it affects fish?
Who knows?
Yes.
Saltwater fish especially.
Depends, Bobby.
Yeah.
So
maybe.
I'm all in.
I love this conversation.
Yeah,
hunting and fishing.
Y'all not ready to release any of that information yet?
We're really close, but this is what we're doing. So full disclosure, I reached out to a lot of people in the hunting industry. Name brands in the hunting industry.
Whatever.
And ask them their opinion about it. Because here's what I wanted to do, and this is something over the years that I was trying to avoid with this. We're going to do this as hard as we can, as extensive as we can, and once we do, we're done and I'm out. Is I did not want for us to do a naive analysis and say, this is what we think y'all meant by the moon affecting it, and then we put the results out there, because this happens all the time. And whether it be on social media or wherever, go, but you didn't do it right. Mm-hmm. You didn't compare this to that. That's what we want to know about, comparing this to that, and we didn't look at it. So that was why I reached out to a lot of people and said, tell me what is the condition, for your internal formula for the moon does this. I want to know what this is, and then we're going to test that. Secondarily, after we got that, and we got a lot of different answers, a lot of different scenarios, then we just did a little social media campaign, and we asked people, which is the question I asked you. So now we got a dichotomous key, all right? Y'all all said, yes, I think the moon has some impact on buck movement behavior. So if you'd filled out our little online test, you would have gone over here, okay, you said yes. Now it is, how does it affect them? So here are your choices. Do they bed more or less because of the moon? If they do, when they're bedding, are they bedding a longer period of time? Meaning, if they're bedding a longer period of time during the day, that means they would be getting up on their feet later in the afternoon and diminishing the amount of time they would be visible before sunset. And then the last question was, if you believe the moon is having an impact, are bucks moving more? Are they covering more ground? And then we had several little categories, like they're going from 10 to 50 yards more, 50 yards to 100 yards more, 200 yards more, 500 yards more. So those are your questions. So now that you all said the moon is affecting buck movement behavior, tell me how it affects them.
He's toying with this guy.
He really is. I think he knows the answer already.
He knows the answer already.
He made you think
about that.
Make no mistake, I know the answer.
Well,
I feel like most of his his need to embarrass someone is pointed at Bobby. So I kind of like to sit back and
I would think
let Bobby hold this. It may, probably all of us.
I think Lanny's getting the brunt of a lot.
Yeah, I like it. I do. Interesting.
We're just, we are just totally guessing anecdotal.
Yeah,
which
and
is, I guess, what he's asking for.
And I've never really thought about, again, the day versus the night movement. I mean,
Well, we've all grown up. Hunting and fishing has so many little anecdotes or so many little
peak
pieces
time.
of
Everybody
advice.
used to think it's a peak time.
And,
oh my goodness.
Information passed down.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Hey, I'll jump on the bus. I ain't scared. I think it affects their timing more than anything. I think they move a little bit more in the middle of the day because that feeding cycle, they're going to get up and feed, get up and feed, get up and feed. They may feed a little bit more. I think your chances of seeing a buck on a full moon, like 11 to 1, is better. That's just a hunch. I got no research other than my gut. And
I know I plan my hunts around a full moon in the rut. And I know from my traditional experience, those have been the best times. I don't know if it's because of the rut or because of the full moon, honestly, now that you talk about it.
But if you're seeing a deer, when you plan that hunt around the moon,
you're
not really proving whether the moon affected it or not. You just killed the deer on that.
Yeah, I mean, we had just had this conversation last year. It was a rut, and Hayden and I were headed out to the woods, and the moon was rising that morning. It was big, looked like something off Star Wars, and I was like, oh, it's on. And sure enough, we rattled in a good deer, and he killed it.
What about that?
But I don't know if that's why it was or not.
For the small price of $29.95, you can buy the moon guide that shows you when the red moon is.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
What the red moon is?
Oh, yeah, they kill giants. They got 2 days a year sometime on the red moon. I'm like, when is the red moon?
I've seen the red moon. I don't remember exactly. Is it called a harvest moon?
I don't think it looks red.
It does kind of look red.
So it seems to me, looking at Bronson, because he's kind of reading all this, I think he's going to end up saying the moon affects hunters more than it affects bucks.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, and I guess that'd be right too if you get out there and see more deer.
So if it affects hunters are going to affect deer behavior, deer movement more than anything is. Just like turkeys and all the calling, changing them. So yeah, Cuz said the word cycle, and that's a big word in all of this, I think.
So I had a couple things I learned a lot from this exercise. Two things. You got two type of moon hunters or advocates for the moon. You've got one group that's probably more frequent. It's the group that's because of moon phase, meaning new moon, full moon, etc. And the answer is, how does it affect a deer? It just means deer are up and moving, and it's just going to be a really productive day. There's going to be a lot of deer moving around. Then there's the one that's far more specialized. That's going to be like what you call a red moon type or whatever. This is the type of person that would say they're going to be a bow hunter. And they do a really, really intensive scouting. And they know, or they think they know, where bucks are bedded. And they are looking for the slightest little edge, that if the impact of the moon would get a buck on his feet 5 minutes earlier, if that buck would move another 50 yards then that gives that afternoon bow hunter 100 yards from a bed a greater chance to shoot. Yeah. So there were some really specialized people that we talked about. And also of note, Toxie said this earlier, most of them were like, we think the moon is a second or third tiered effect, meaning rut phase number one, weather number two, now fold in the moon number three.
Yeah, I would agree there. Yeah. Sure. Maybe throw food in there too.
Interesting.
It is.
So before we totally leave, we were talking about velvets. I just want to circle back with one question. Do you see every now and then, every year, we hear somebody killing a really big deer that's in full velvet later on in the year, and that deer's got some kind of injuries to his testicles or something? Is that happen a lot? I mean, now you can't predict about deer having injuries, but it seems like. Is that deer? I got a lot of questions here. Is he going to shed his antlers, or are they just going to stay in velvet all the time?
So I'm sorry, but it would depend somewhat on the extent of the injury. So there's a couple different scenarios that can go on here. There would be the congenital issue, meaning it was born this way. hormonally, genitalia, et cetera, et cetera. We can talk about that in a sec. But typically it's one of those, I used to get pictures of this buck and everything was completely normal. And then this year, he never shed his velvet. He stayed in velvet, never hardened his antlers. That was most likely an injury to his testicles, and it is no longer producing testosterone either at all or to the extent needed to trigger the antler hardening and the shedding of velvet. So unless those testicles get repaired somehow, that is going to be an injury for the rest of his life. And so, Bobby, he would not shed his antlers. They would never harden. And so that is where Steve has a wonderful specimen and a skull. If I knew we were going to talk about this, I would have brought it. But he has one of these bucks that had some type of injury like that. And you can see what appears to be 3 years of antler growth and basically these different layers of antler. So you had kind of a normal antler still in velvet, and then you had these other years underneath it that kind of look like growth rings associated with that, but still in velvet.
Yeah, that's
Interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Aren't
And then
they
you've
cool
got
critters?
some of these on the other side, it's like the antlered doe and so forth. So a lot of that would be hermaphrodite. So a lot of times the buck did have testicles, but they never descended. They were internal. And so they were producing enough of a trickle of testosterone to kind of have a small set of antlers. So externally, it looks like a doe, but internally, it has a testosterone source from some testes.
And then occasionally there's a doe that'll have antlers.
That's what I was referring to.
But it's not a
with
doe,
antlers.
it's a buck.
Okay, well, so I thought that was a hermaphrodite.
Well, he said the word.
He said the word.
Hermaphrodite.
It's actually, he pronounced it right.
You pronounced it right, I pronounced it right. How did you pronounce it?
Hermaphrodite.
Hermaphrodite.
So it's not a doe, it's a buck that's testicles hadn't dropped.
Well, heck, check me. Now you got me guessing that I pronounced it wrong.
Hey, Lanny,
Hey, Bobby.
have you ever wondered if your feeder went off? Or if it's even got corn in it?
Yeah, you sit there at night wondering about it.
Moultrie has solved this.
Feed Hub by Moultrie Mobile is the world's first cellular feeder conversion kit.
That's just some high-tech stuff.
Fits on any feeder that helps monitor the level of feed and lets you know if it went off or not. And you can remotely control it.
Can I look at your feeder if we're on the hub?
I really hope not, but we're going to have to talk to the guys at Moultrie about that. This is the biggest thing in feeders since corn.
That's saying a lot.
With Feed Hub, there's no more stressing, no more guessing. This technology allows you to remotely monitor your feeders.
You know, we always say feed safely, do it the right way.
No doubt about it.
But to learn more about this, visit moultriemobile.com/feedhub. It's a great invention.
Unbelievable technology and products brought to us by our buddies at Moultrie.
Well, okay, look, so one thing that I wanted to ask you about, we've got a drought map up here.
Is it dry at your house?
Yes, very much so.
Most of the whitetails range, we're looking at this map of the United States, it is either abnormally dry or moderately dry, severe dry, or extremely dry. Here we are, it's late August, and there's small chances of rain on the horizon. This is exactly like it was last year.
It seems like last year.
Tell us a little bit about the impacts this has on wildlife and pros, the cons. Let's just talk about that a little bit. And I know there's nothing we can necessarily do.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak about all wildlife. I can only give you a little insight on the deer side. What will probably take it on the chin the most is going to be fawns. Luckily when you get an adult deer, whether it be a buck or a doe, they are really, really resilient in terms of their survival. Now, their body weight can change and be sensitive to the environment. Of course, a buck, his body weight and his antlers, especially sensitive to the environment. But from like a population dynamic standpoint, it's all about that fawn crop. So if a doe is struggling to get good resources, then lactation can be limited. And so fawn nutrition could be limited. And so then we also have a fork in the road with them. So that could be death. And so extremely, think about our colleagues in South Texas. When you have these really 2-3 drought years in a row, I mean, it is a 5% sometimes or less fawn crop. The fawns just won't live through it. Probably not that severe here. But one thing we have documented is that there can be a multi-year effect of when a doe, you call it maternal condition, but when that fawn is in utero and even after nursing, and there's a very, very stressful period there, time period, you can see the effects for a number of years. Yeah. We call it a cohort, but that age group of bucks over time, you can still see the legacy of that stressful event. So it does affect them. Now, surprisingly, when we look at our colleagues from MDWF&P and the DMAP data set that we have, and research-wise, that has just been a game changer for us. We always thought, Steve and I went into that with MDWF&P thinking, we need to find out the effects of drought. These dry summers and dry falls, that has got to be having a big impact. And it does, in terms of body weight and things like that in the fall at the skin and shed. But what had a greater impact than precipitation was just heat. Day after day after day, the heat. And so those typically go together. Drought and heat go together. But when you have a 30-plus year data set, you also have examples of there was a little more rainfall, hotter, less, et cetera, et cetera. And when you start teasing out what had the biggest impact or footprint on deer, it was heat, number one, and then precipitation, rainfall, number two.
You know, it reinforces what you have taught us, what we've known, too, and learned by experience that everybody wants a miracle cure. Cuz made fun of a product a minute ago. Pour this on the ground and watch your deer grow these big antlers. And so even with great food plots in the summer and great, feeding them, record rack, one of the best feeds there is in the world for deer. I mean, the best nutrition possible. He is, to achieve the most your deer can do, you have to have a full process. And if they don't have it when they're a fawn, it's like building a house without a foundation. And so what I've learned in some places we've actually been able to achieve a lot is it takes years, because the fawn had to start out in great condition to start with, or he never really had a chance no matter what you did. Now, I know there's a few exceptions, but largely that is what we're talking about when he says that you can see the effects and follow that age group of deer because they didn't get all the nutrition as a fawn. They don't have a chance to get to the most they can be. And that's why I still remember from, 30-something years ago when somebody that was famous for growing this huge deer, he said, look, he was talking about genetics. And he said, let me tell you, in my opinion, what creates great genetics or big deer is years and years and years of great nutrition. And he was right, I think. Don't you?
Absolutely.
So it just proves that again, the data he just talked about, when we have this super heat and super dry summers and the fawns are in such poor condition, that's not going to be a great crop in the future.
Yeah. So I won't belabor this. You've said this. We pointed this out a couple of times. I'm always astonished when I think about it. But that doe who's nursing 2 fawns, she needs an extreme amount of calories every day. 20,000, I think, was the number that you had last time you were here. So you're saying she's struggling to find succulent vegetation to be able to produce the milk that they need.
Right. What is also occurring too when you have this drought is I was out a few days ago in the field, and I was really, really impressed with I think we even shot a little video about it, is your habitat. And even what we call managed openings or old fields. So in other words, it's a food plot of native plants that are all so diverse and so much more drought tolerant. And so that has a big, big role. But what was really interesting, it was ragweed, is that even there was these other native plants that were struggling because of no rain. That ragweed, it just blew me away at still how green and how succulent and how the deer were targeting that and wearing it out. So, but even then, this is something, shout out to Craig Harper and Marcus Lashley, something they published from Marcus's master's work with Craig a long time ago, was they looked at, even with the native plants, the effect of drought and how that affected crude protein levels. And, you know, when you think about it, if these plants stop growing, if they don't have the soil resources, if they don't have the rain, the moisture, and so forth, and they stop growing, that means their quality, their nutrient quality is going to go down. They're more fibrous. They don't have the energy. They don't have the crude protein. So all of that fits in together to where the best thing you can do is give deer a lot of choices with a lot of plant diversity. And then you just got to cross your fingers and hope that it rains and they're of the highest quality available.
Yeah. Diversity comes back time and time again.
Every time.
Yeah, and hope that it rains.
Looking around the room, are y'all seeing any acorns this year? Or you think we're going to have a...
I've seen some acorns.
Yeah. Just looking up. And
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, it's not. I don't think on my little farm we make that right all the time. I don't think it's going to be a bumper crop, but yeah, we're seeing some.
Yeah, I've seen a few. I hadn't
It's
looked real hard
it's
at
hard to see it's hard to tell for me what level they're at right now because of the lack of rainfall. Because right there toward the end, I think they get big quick.
that. Well, yeah, and
They
can
do, but I
abort,
have
too.
I've seen the drought so bad they abort.
Yeah, they will.
So
abort.
we're close to that now
Yeah,
if we
I
don't
think
get
so.
some rain. And that's a really sad thing.
Yeah, for everything.
Yes.
Wow. Well, when you look at that map, that's a big chunk of wildlife,
Mississippi's
whitetail
dry,
country.
bro.
Yeah.
And Alabama.
Say most of it.
And Louisiana.
Yeah.
Georgia's looking all right over there.
Wow. Well, Bronson, what else we need to be asking you? You got anything?
I'm waiting on the moon book
Coming.
coming.
Yeah.
I'm gonna harass you till that's ready.
The Ferminator is the industry's most versatile piece of food plot equipment, allowing plotters to do every step of the process, working the soil, adding seed and soil supplements, and compacting, from start to finish with a single implement. It's hassle-free by design. Set it for the seed size and simply drive the tractor, and the Ferminator does the rest. Check it out at theferminator.com.
Nosler is known for their bullets, and now they're making suppressors. Nosler suppressors are made for hunting. Adding a Nosler suppressor to your rifle will make you a quieter, more accurate, and more effective hunter. Protect your hearing and disturb less game with a Nosler suppressor. The time to hunt quiet is now. Learn more at nosler.com.
So, Bronson, let me ask you. I think these guys may have another question, but this will be my last question. So, think about guys across the South right now. It's dry. We've described the scenario. Everybody's kind of in the same boat. Fixing to be when this comes out, it'll be in September. Would you recommend that guys just get everything ready to plant and let's wait on some moisture? From a guy who oversees a lot of planting in the state of Mississippi, what would your advice be?
You're exactly right. I would go ahead and get everything lined up. I would have my seed, opportunity for soil amendments if that's what you're doing. I don't even know if you can really do any tillage right now. There's different places you probably could, but essentially I would have everything set that once you got some soil moisture, then you could start planting. I don't think you're going to have any wiggle room. And here's the thing too, we had Eric Larson, who y'all have had on several times, our podcast, to talk about this last year. We got in a pickle last year about the same thing.
Yes.
And if you have everything ready to go, you do just have to cross your fingers based on moisture. The issue is your food plot is going to come up when you finally get some rain. It's just that you're not going to have as much time with the higher soil temperature to get a lot of plant growth. So it may not look like you have a productive food plot, but you're still going to have a food plot. So I wouldn't walk away and abandon it.
No.
But I would have everything ready to go.
Right. And I would not. I would not be turning my soil at all. So, say everybody's getting ready. I'm gonna break up all my soil. I'm gonna have everything ready. I hear you on the moisture. Well, guess what? You just let it all go.
Yeah.
Because you're still, unless it's just super sandy, you're retaining soil moisture even in this drought to some degree. If you break that soil, it is so gone. But by the time you ever get a rain, it's going to take so much more rain. So my point is, if you see, like we've got a good chance coming, I hope it's enough, but there's like 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row with a good chance of rain. So if you see that coming, I mean, first of all, it could rain pretty good and you still can go work all you want to.
Yeah.
Then break your soil if you think you have to and get it. And for God's sake, in this kind of environment, have you a good cultipacker or something, a roller or something to compact the soil back. I think that people are going to be okay from what I'm looking at, but it has definitely changed. This is going to be 3 years in a row like this.
It sure is.
Drill, baby, drill.
And
That's what
there
I'm
you
gonna
go. I would look at the cost of a drill for a lot of people can be overwhelming. There's no doubt about it. I would just recommend that you start discounting out the cost of that drill. Now let's do it over 10 years.
Yeah.
Let's do it over 20 years.
Yeah, 15.
Because those things, if you service them, they hold their value. They work a long time. And I would just think about all the opportunities because, man, it seems like, don't quote me on this. This is just my experience. It seems like for every 5-year period, you only have 1 or 2 out of 5 where everything works out.
Shoot.
If that.
Yeah, I'm with you, cuz.
Yeah, if that. So
It's a labor of love.
You
for
have
sure.
more options to you having that drill
Yeah,
than
I
having to
agree
worry
1,000%.
about
Yeah,
disking and all
especially if you have a lot of ground to cover. If you
Yeah.
maybe just have a few small spots, it's entirely different. But I'd be learning, Dudley's great at it, preserving that soil moisture,
Yeah.
which you can.
The poor man's
That's what I was
no-till works
speaking
like a
of. And
champion.
the key to that was he doesn't ever break the ground. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he's still in this, what we're in today, he couldn't grow anything either.
No.
Nothing would work right now.
All right, guys. Well, we need to pray for some
Pray
rain.
for rain. It's out there today.
Yeah, it's popping up in these afternoons
Yep.
around us. So,
Yep.
Bronson, it's good to see you.
You too, as
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
Always good to have
Yeah,
you here.
we always learn something. This
Yeah.
whole moon thing, we know it's aimed at Lanny.
Speaking
so.
of, we evidently have quite the meteorology department over there too.
Yeah, we got a good one. Yeah.
Because I've noticed more and more. I started seeing, and I watch, there's the Weather Channel and the weather people, and I'm looking where they're from, and a lot of them went to Mississippi State.
Nice.
What makes that program unique is that, of course, there's a lot of institutions that teach meteorology and all that sort of stuff. What makes MSU unique is they actually, as part of their degree program or a specific degree, it's the broadcast side of it.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's not just you learning the science of it. They actually, part of their curriculum, you get up there in front of the green screen or the blue screen or whatever it is,
That's right.
and you practice delivering that information. And they have a unique program for that.
That's very cool. And I noticed it was one, he went somewhere, I won't call the name, but very prominent. He went somewhere, then he went for a graduate degree to Mississippi State after that, and that was to get the training to be, broadcaster.
Run that green screen.
Very cool.
Here.
One more, there's so many cool things in Starkville.
Yeah, well, I guess guys want to be like guys
Hail
and
State.
gals like Jim Cantori.
Yep.
He's probably a
Cantori.
hero in that meteorologist world.
He's probably let me guess, he's probably a Penn State guy.
If Jim Cantori shows up, you need to leave.
They got a big one up there. And Florida State's got a big one down there too.
Jim's here. I'm gone.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I say when I've seen friends that were at the beach or live somewhere, and then if you wake up in the morning, you look out down the street and you see Jim Cantori, evacuate.
Go home.
All right, guys. Bronson, we want to get you back. I want to talk about annuals and perennials one day when you got a chance. Get
Sure
you back
thing.
over here and do that. So,
Okay.
Anybody else, cuz, you got another question?
No, I'm good, man.
Yeah.
I always love listening to Dr. Bronson Strickland.
gosh.
No doubt about it.
We're lucky to have him.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
He was our first podcast
He
guest.
was.
He sure was.
He's
going way back
He's the Elon Musk of whitetails, like Dudley's the Elon Musk of trees. Yeah,
Well, if we were like some kind of fraternity, he would be our house band.
yeah, absolutely.
That's true.
We appreciate him very much.
Yeah, we do. Everything.
Hey,
you do
thank
over
y'all
there.
for letting me sit in again. I know I'm just
Yeah,
filling
well,
in.
whoa, wait a minute now. So,
Oh my gosh, no.
as a thank you, Bronson, thank you for coming over here. Got you a Spartan camera.
Boom.
Thank you
As
very
a
much.
thank you.
Wow.
Because for you coming for a couple of, I got you a Spartan box.
There you go. I'll take it. My grandkids will play with that for an hour. I
Yeah,
promise
but that's a
that.
thank you for you guys coming in here and helping us
Yeah.
out.
Appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So Looking around the room, Landy, you look like you have another question.
I don't. I could actually talk to Bronson about whitetails for hours and hours and
Ditto.
hours. So if I keep on talking,
No.
we're going to keep on
We
running.
gotta let him go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cuz got to pick up Cranky.
Yeah, he does. Why don't you say goodbye, Cuz?
Hey, goodbye, cuz.
Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.